After 25 years beside him, raising kids, building his business, he left me for someone who makes him feel young again. So I let him. And gifted his new bride a framed photo, our prenup signed and dated. She smiled politely until her lawyer translated it. Now they both feel old. The day I found Luke's wedding ring abandoned in the soap dish wasn't the moment he left me. That had happened years before. In increments so small I barely noticed until the chasm was too wide to cross. 25 years earlier, I'd stood in his parents' backyard, clutching wildflowers, making promises under string lights. Luke had gripped my hands with such certainty, his eyes reflecting dreams only we could see. We were 23, broke but ambitious. Our wedding cost $427 including the dress. "We're going to build something incredible together," he'd whispered that night as we lay on a borrowed mattress in our first apartment. The next morning, I helped him unpack cardboard boxes in the garage his uncle had rented to us at a discount. Shelving units from salvage sales. A desk rescued from a campus dumpster. His mechanical engineering degree hung proudly alongside my business certificate. "Patent manufacturing solutions," he'd said, tracing the words on a napkin sketch while I made coffee in our hot plate kitchenette. "PMS for short." "Terrible acronym," I laughed. "Let me work on the branding." By sunset I designed our first logo. Blue and silver, contemporary but trustworthy. The next morning I started making cold calls while Luke tinkered with prototype designs for his first industrial mixing valve. Our first client meeting happened in our living room. I'd borrowed a blazer from my sister, spent an hour arranging cheese on a plate we'd received as a wedding gift. Luke paced nervously before they arrived. I took his hand, steadied him, whispered marketing points we'd rehearsed together. They signed a contract for $3,200. Not enough to live on but enough to believe. Those early years blend together now. Late nights updating spreadsheets by hand, the ancient computer whirring while Luke slept on the couch, having passed out after a 16-hour prototype session. I'd gently remove pencils from his fingers, cover him with the Afghan my grandmother had made, and continue working until dawn. When I discovered I was pregnant 3 years in, we panicked. Then adapted. I took client calls between bouts of morning sickness. Negotiated our first warehouse lease while 7 months pregnant, one hand on my swollen belly as I argued for better terms. The leasing agent took pity, knocked off 15%. "My wife did the same," he'd confided. "You two are gonna make it." Emma was born during our busiest quarter to date. I brought her to the office when she was 2 weeks old, a bassinet beside my desk as I fielded calls and managed shipping logistics. Luke's mother helped when she could, but her health was already failing. "You're incredible," Luke would say, kissing my forehead as he rushed out to meet with a potential investor. And I believed him. I believed in us. By the time Jack arrived 3 years later, we had 6 employees and had moved into a proper office park. I'd created systems, protocols, filing methods. I'd learned accounting software, taught myself HTML to build our first website, handled customer complaints with such finesse that dissatisfied clients often became our most loyal advocates. The night Jack developed pneumonia at age 4 sticks with me still. His tiny chest heaving, fever spiking to 104. "I've got that trade expo in Denver," Luke had said, hovering uncertainly in the hospital doorway, bag already packed. "Go," I'd told him. "We'll be fine." I spent 3 nights in that vinyl hospital chair, neck cramping, working on my laptop during Jack's brief periods of sleep. When he finally improved, I drove him home, tucked him into bed with his favorite dinosaur toy, then dialed into Luke's presentation remotely to help him close the deal. The business grew. We hired more people. Moved to a larger facility. Through elementary school concerts and teenage driving lessons, through my father's funeral and Luke's mother's decline, I balanced it all. Our home, our children, his company. I say his company, though my fingerprints were on every contract, every employee handbook, every anniversary celebration. I never took an official title. Never drew a formal salary. What was his was ours, we'd agreed. At our 20th anniversary dinner, the last one he remembered, Luke raised a glass to me. "To the woman who makes everything possible," he'd said. Our children, then in college, had clinked glasses in agreement. I didn't notice when things began to shift. Maybe it was when we became too successful for crisis. When routine replaced desperation. When Luke started attending networking events alone because, Someone needs to keep things running. Cassandra arrived on a Tuesday. 26, MBA fresh from Wharton, sleek ponytail and perfect teeth. Our new marketing consultant, Luke announced. She's got amazing ideas for digital expansion. I'd nodded, extended my hand. Welcomed her to our family business. She's just full of ideas, he said later that week. Energizing to have her around. I noticed the changes in increments. Luke checking his phone during dinner. The subtle scent of an unfamiliar cologne. Late meetings that couldn't possibly run that long. Our 25th anniversary approached. I hinted about the Amalfi Coast trip we'd always promised ourselves. Luke would change the subject, mention supply chain disruptions, rising costs. The day itself came and went. No card. No acknowledgement. I made dinner anyway, lit candles. He texted at 7, caught up at work. Don't wait up. A week later he sat me down at our kitchen table, the same one where we'd helped our children with science projects and college applications. His voice held the detached professionalism he used with underperforming vendors. I feel stuck, he said, not meeting my eyes. I want to feel young again. Something cold and certain settled in my chest. And you think she'll give you that? He shrugged, a gesture so dismissive of 25 years it almost took my breath away. She gets me. We laugh. She makes things exciting. I didn't scream, though my throat burned with unspoken words. I didn't beg, though my heart hammered with panic at the abyss opening before me. I just nodded. Then go. He looked surprised, had expected tears perhaps. Arguments. A scene. Instead I stood, collected our dinner plates and began washing them with methodical precision. Because in that moment I remembered something he had clearly forgotten. 25 years ago, on the day before our wedding, his father had insisted on protection. Just business, he'd said, pushing papers across his home office desk. You'll thank me someday if things go south. Luke had signed without reading, eager to rejoin the rehearsal dinner festivities. I'd read every line while he scribbled his signature. Then I'd taken my copy, had it notarized and locked it away, just like everything else I secured for our future. As Luke packed his things that night, I watched silently from the doorway of the bedroom we'd shared for a quarter century. He avoided my eyes, mumbled something about lawyers keeping things civil. I simply nodded, already calculating my next moves with the same precision I'd applied to building his empire. Our empire. Mine now. The morning after Luke left, I woke before dawn, a habit from decades of early starts to prepare for his day before mine. The house echoed with absence. I made coffee for one, sat at our kitchen island and opened my laptop. First I changed all my passwords. Then I created a spreadsheet, methodical, organized, just as I'd managed our household and his business for 25 years. This wasn't emotion. This was strategy. When Emma called later that day, concern saturating her voice, I kept my tone measured. Your father and I are taking some time apart, I said, stirring soup I had no intention of eating. Mom, are you okay? Do you want me to come home? My daughter, always the protector. I'm fine, sweetheart. Focusing on next steps. I didn't mention Cassandra. Didn't need to burden my children with their father's midlife cliché. Jack called an hour later. He knew more. Luke had already reached out to explain things man to man. My son's fury burned through the phone line. I'm coming over. I'll help you fight this. No fighting necessary, I assured him. I'm handling it. When our mutual friends called with awkward condolences, I responded with dignified brevity. These things happen, I'd say. We're working through it amicably. Luke returned for his things 3 days later. I made myself scarce, leaving the house while he packed his designer suits, leather-bound books, and framed industry awards. He left behind anything requiring emotional labor. Photo albums, children's keepsakes, even the dog. Will you be okay with Rusty? He texted afterward. Our 12-year-old retriever that I'd fed, walked, and taken to vet appointments while Luke traveled. We'll manage, I replied. Just as we always had. When his lawyer contacted me, I responded with gentle deference. I don't want conflict, I told the woman on the phone, her voice sharp with professional detachment. Let's make this as smooth as possible. She seemed relieved, had clearly expected hysterics from the abandoned housewife. Mr. Patton has expressed similar sentiments, she assured me. I bet he had. I waited a full week before contacting Marianne Levitt, the estate attorney who had helped us draft our wills 15 years earlier. Her office smelled of leather and lemon polish, an environment of old money discretion. "I remember the prenuptial agreement," she said, adjusting her glasses as she scanned her computer screen. "Quite standard for its time, with some interesting clauses regarding infidelity." I nodded calmly. "I'd like to review our options." "Options?" Her mouth curved slightly. "You've always been precise with language, Paige." I spent 3 hours in her office that day, emerging with a comprehensive understanding of every legal advantage at my disposal. Meanwhile, Luke embraced his freedom with the enthusiasm of a college freshman. Cassandra moved into his new downtown apartment within 17 days of our separation, a fact relayed to me by our neighbor Martha, who'd spotted them unloading furniture from a rental truck. "Such a pretty young thing," Martha had said, squeezing my arm. "But no substance. Not like you." I smiled and thanked her for the pie she'd brought, comfort food for the discarded wife. Social media became my silent intelligence network. Cassandra documented their new life with filtered enthusiasm: rooftop dinners, weekend getaways, matching workout gear. She'd tagged herself future Mrs. Patton within the first month. Her bio briefly included CEO wife and marketing director at Patton Manufacturing Solutions. I never commented, never reacted, just observed and archived. 42 days after Luke's departure, I returned to the office, ostensibly to drop off some historical files I'd kept at home. The receptionist's face registered shock, then pity. "Mrs. Patton, so nice to see you. Should I let Mr. Patton know you're here?" "No need to disturb him," I said, placing the box on her desk. "Just returning company property." As I waited for the elevator, Cassandra emerged from what had been my office. She wore a cream blazer I recognized from her Instagram, captioned, "Power moves just last week." Our eyes met briefly before hers skittered away, her shoulders stiffening. I glimpsed her behind my old desk, fingertips trailing possessively across the surface where I'd once planned our company's entire supply chain reorganization. She flipped through vendor files with casual entitlement, speaking into a headset with exaggerated authority. On my way out, I nodded politely to longtime employees who couldn't quite meet my gaze. Their discomfort was telling. The office atmosphere had shifted. The divorce proceedings began formally the following week. Luke's initial offer came through his attorney, division of our personal assets, but the business remained entirely his. "I want to be fair," he said during our one direct conversation, seated across from me at a sterile conference table. "You deserve something for your contributions." I noted his hesitation, the slight diminishment of 25 years of partnership. "Of course," I replied, hands folded neatly. "Let's keep it amicable." His relief was palpable. He'd expected screaming, tears, revenge fantasies. Not this calm, accommodating woman who seemed eager to move on. The whispers reached me through the grapevine. Cassandra at a ladies' lunch with the younger wives of Luke's business associates. "She's too classy to get messy. That's why he left her." Every night I returned to our family home, the one I'd decorated, maintained, and filled with memories. I slept in our bed, still using only my half out of habit. During the day I established new routines. Coffee with friends who'd remained loyal. Volunteer work at the community center. Daily walks with Rusty along the lake. I declined invitations to events where they might appear. Removed myself from business functions where awkwardness would prevail. I became, in everyone's eyes, the dignified ex, gracefully fading into the background. Meanwhile they flourished publicly. Purchased a country property with expansive grounds and a charming guest house. Cassandra posted virtual tours, reclaimed wood beams, custom marble countertops, his and hers offices overlooking a private pond. I never commented. Never corrected the narrative forming around us. The successful businessman upgrading to a younger model, the devoted wife stepping aside with grace. Said I prepared. I retrieved the original prenuptial agreement from my safety deposit box, Luke's hasty signature clearly visible on the final page, including the clause regarding infidelity and business assets. I made 3 notarized copies. I consulted with Marianne Levitt weekly, compiling documentation of every company decision in which I'd played a central role. I scheduled meetings with the bank, removed my name from joint credit accounts that carried significant debt. I transferred funds from our shared emergency account, accumulated through my careful budgeting, into my personal holdings. The mortgage to our family home? Solely in my name since refinancing 5 years earlier when Luke had been traveling during the closing. His luxury car? Leased through a business account requiring my signature as a guarantor. But the true revelation waited in that prenuptial agreement. A clause Luke had never bothered to read, assuming his father's lawyer had protected only his interests. In reality, the document secured my claim to the business in the event of his infidelity. Our business. My business now. And soon Cassandra would discover exactly what she had married. A man with charm, social connections, and absolutely nothing else. The trap had been set 25 years ago. I simply needed to let him walk into it. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday, nestled among bills and grocery flyers like it belonged there. Thick cream cardstock with gold foil lettering. Luke and Cassandra cordially invite you to share in their joy. I held it between 2 fingers, marveling at the audacity. Our divorce wasn't even finalized. My attorney assured me it wasn't illegal, just breathtakingly tactless. Jack called that evening, voice tight with outrage. Did you get it? The invitation. I did, I replied, stirring pasta I was actually hungry for, a new development. It's disgusting. Emma and I aren't going. That's your choice, I said, keeping my tone neutral. But don't burn bridges on my account. My son's silence spoke volumes. Mom, how are you so calm about this? I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Because I'm playing chess, not checkers. The wedding was scheduled for the 3rd weekend in May, a garden ceremony at the country club where Luke had recently purchased a membership. According to the society page announcement, it would be an intimate affair celebrating new beginnings. Cassandra's social media told a different story. Extensive floral arrangements, custom monogrammed napkins, a 7-tier cake. She tagged multiple posts with hashtag Future Mrs. Patton and hashtag Second Chance Love. Each carefully staged photo featured Luke looking uncomfortable in his happiness, like a man smiling through a dental procedure. I sent my regrets via the RSVP card. In the additional notes section, I simply wrote congratulations. Let them wonder at my sincerity. 2 days before the ceremony, I visited Cartwright & Sons, a high-end framing shop downtown that had been in business since my grandparents' era. Mr. Cartwright himself assisted me, a dignified gentleman who addressed me as Mrs. Patton without awkwardness or pity. Something elegant but substantial, I told him, sliding the document across the counter. He glanced at it, then at me, a flicker of understanding passing behind his professional demeanor. Silver, I think. With archival quality glass and backing. Perfect, I agreed. And gift-wrapped, please. When I returned to collect it the following afternoon, the result exceeded my expectations. The prenuptial agreement looked almost regal behind museum-quality glass, the silver frame catching light from multiple angles. Mr. Cartwright had added a subtle matte and eggshell that made the document pop. Luke's signature stood out prominently at the bottom, next to the notary's official seal. Beautiful work, I told him. It's not often I frame legal documents, he replied, carefully securing the package in silver paper and a white satin ribbon. But this one seemed significant. I nodded. More than you know. The day of their wedding dawned clear and temperate, the kind of perfect May weather that costs extra. I spent the morning in my garden, replanting perennials and pruning rose bushes that had survived decades of Michigan winters. There was something cathartic about digging my hands into the soil, creating space for new growth. At precisely noon, a courier arrived at my door. Clean-cut, professional, with a clipboard requiring my signature. Special delivery for the Patton-Whitaker wedding, I confirmed, handing him the silver package along with a generous tip. Any message with this, ma'am? He asked. I shook my head. The gift speaks for itself. 4 hours later, my phone pinged with a notification. Cassandra had gone live on Instagram, something she did regularly, curating her perfect life for eager followers. I clicked, curious despite myself. The camera panned across manicured grounds, white chairs arranged in neat rows, floral arrangements in blush and cream. Guests mingled with champagne flutes, the women in pastel dresses, the men in summer suits. The video captured their ceremony briefly. Vows exchanged beneath a flower-draped pergola, a kiss that lasted slightly too long for public consumption. Then the reception. Tables under string lights. A jazz quartet. The cake cutting approaching. I set my phone aside and poured a glass of the Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. At 7:43 p.m. my doorbell rang. Emma stood on the porch, still wearing her bridesmaid dress. A compromise she'd made after fierce negotiations with both me and her father. "You need to see this," she said, striding past me into the living room. She pulled up a video on her phone. Not the polished live stream, but shaky footage captured by someone inside the reception. Cassandra, radiant in her fitted gown, opening gifts at a table of honor. Laughing, exclaiming, passing items to Luke, who looked increasingly bored. Then my package, distinctive in its silver wrapping. "This one doesn't have a card," someone off-camera remarked. Cassandra turned the package over, examining it. "Mystery gift," she said playfully. "Maybe it's from a secret admirer." The camera zoomed unsteadily as she unwrapped it, revealing the silver frame. Her expression shifted to polite confusion. "A photo," she guessed, lifting it from the tissue paper. Then recognition. Not of the document itself, but of what it represented. "What's this?" she asked, voice sharpening with uncertainty. Guests leaned closer, curious. Luke was caught in conversation across the room, oblivious. Then an older man approached, Cassandra's father, I realized. A partner at Whitaker & Associates, a mid-tier law firm known for corporate litigation. He took the frame, adjusted his glasses. The camera caught his expression shifting from curiosity to recognition to alarm. His jaw visibly tightened as he read the highlighted clause. "In the event of infidelity by either party, the betrayed spouse shall retain all business equity, control of the primary residence, and full management of retirement investments regardless of contribution." He whispered something to his daughter, angling the frame away from prying eyes. Cassandra's face drained of color, the contrast against her white dress almost theatrical. Luke approached then, champagne in hand, still laughing at some joke. "What's going on? Another toaster oven? Is this real?" Cassandra asked, voice barely audible on the recording. Luke peered at the frame, confusion giving way to shock. His champagne glass tilted, liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "She kept it," Cassandra muttered. "All this time." The camera captured the exact moment Luke understood. His features collapsing like a building during demolition, controlled but catastrophic. Around them, guests sensed the shift. Conversations quieted. The quartet played on, oblivious. Cassandra set the frame down with careful precision. No dramatic gestures. No tears. Just the calm deliberation of someone recalculating everything. The video ended abruptly. Emma looked at me, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Mom, did you really?" I sipped my wine. I simply returned a document that belonged equally to both of us. "But the timing was perfect," I finished. "Beginnings should be honest, don't you think?" After Emma left, I poured another glass and sat on the back porch, listening to crickets emerge in the gathering twilight. Rusty dozed at my feet, gray muzzle twitching with dreams. My phone lit up at midnight. Luke's name appeared for the first time in months. Why no? 2 words that contained volumes. Anger, shock, accusation. I considered ignoring it. Considered a dozen cutting responses. Instead, I typed the simple truth. "I wanted you both to start your future fully informed." I set my phone to silent and went to bed. For the first time since he'd left, I stretched across to his side, claiming the entire mattress. I slept dreamlessly, deeply, without waking until morning light filtered through curtains I'd finally changed to colors I preferred. Tomorrow the legal proceedings would begin in earnest. The company transfers. The asset evaluations. The conversations with employees and vendors. But tonight was for savoring the perfect delivery of the gift I'd kept safe for 25 years. Morning arrived with my phone displaying 4 missed calls from Luke, all between 6:17 and 6:42 a.m. No voicemails. No texts beyond last night's terse question. Just desperate attempts to reach me before business hours. I brewed coffee, took Rusty for his morning walk, and dressed carefully. Charcoal pencil skirt, cream blouse. The pearl earrings I'd bought myself for our 20th anniversary. Professional armor. By 9 a.m. Marianne Levitt had already emailed. "It's begun." Their attorney called. Contesting validity of prenuptial agreement on grounds of duress and unreasonable terms. Standard tactics. Nothing to worry about. Meeting at 2. I confirmed the appointment and drove to the local bakery, the one that had provided treats for company milestones and family celebrations for 2 decades. The owner, Elena, greeted me with her usual warmth but added unusual deference. Word had spread. "The usual order, Mrs. Patton?" she asked, reaching for a box. "Yes, but deliver it to the office today, please. The main conference room at 11. She nodded, understanding perfectly. Special instructions? Just the company logo. The original one. While sipping tea in the bakery's corner table, I checked social media. Cassandra had emerged from her wedding disaster with manufactured resilience. A filtered sunset photo appeared on her account, golden light strategically blurring her expression. Her caption read, "New beginnings are still beginnings." I noticed smaller changes too. Her bio streamlined, professional credentials emphasized. Marketing executive remained. Future Mrs. Patton stayed. But CO wife had disappeared like it had never existed. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, Luke's executive assistant for the past 8 years. A woman who had witnessed our partnership from the inside, ordering anniversary gifts on Luke's behalf when he forgot. Board members asking questions. Al says it's a misunderstanding. Meeting called for Thursday. Thought you should know. I thanked her for the information, knowing her career now balanced precariously between old loyalties and new realities. By Monday the situation had accelerated. Marianne called while I was deadheading roses in the garden. "Cassandra Whitaker has retained Goldstein and Associates," she said without preamble. Her father apparently recommended them. Smart move but not unexpected. "What's their angle?" I asked, snipping a faded bloom with perhaps more force than necessary. "Standard approach. Claiming the prenup is outdated, unconscionable given current circumstances, potentially signed under duress." Marianne's tone remained unruffled. "Nothing we haven't anticipated." Susan Chin, who'd served on several community boards with me, called that afternoon, ostensibly about the hospital fundraiser but clearly fishing for details. "I heard there was quite a scene at the wedding," she ventured after exhausting legitimate committee business. "Did you?" I kept my voice neutral. Cassandra apparently broke down crying later. "In the restroom. Said she didn't know what she'd gotten herself into." I murmured noncommittally but filed away the information. "She thought she was marrying into the company," Susan continued, unable to contain herself. "Not just the man." "Understandable confusion," I replied, allowing myself that small indulgence. The official letters arrived Tuesday morning. Formal notifications of intent to contest, requests for negotiation meetings, thinly veiled threats of prolonged legal battles. I forwarded everything to Marianne without reading beyond the opening paragraphs. Meanwhile, the company continued operating. I hadn't yet exercised my legal right to step in, choosing instead to watch how Luke would handle the unfolding crisis. Through Jennifer's discreet updates, I learned he'd told the executive team that everything was under control, a minor marital misunderstanding being resolved. But the company rumor mill churned relentlessly. Employees whispered about potential ownership changes. Vendors called with routine inquiries about payment guarantees. A major client postponed signing a contract renewal, citing internal review processes. By Wednesday, Luke could no longer maintain the facade. He requested a meeting through proper channels. His attorney contacting mine, who then contacted me. "Do you want to take this meeting?" Marianne asked. "Legally speaking, you're under no obligation." "I'll see him," I decided. "But on my terms. My office tomorrow at 4. The office I'd selected was not Luke's expansive corner suite with its walnut desk and city views. Instead, I chose the smaller space I'd always used when working at company headquarters. No pretense, just functionality. I arrived an hour early to review documents with Jennifer and Michael, our CFO, who diplomatically maintained communication with both sides. "The Q2 projections look concerning," Michael noted, sliding financial reports across the desk. 3 major accounts have put orders on hold pending leadership clarification." I nodded, scanning the numbers. "And the Westridge contract?" "Still in limbo. Their procurement office wants assurance about who they're actually doing business with." Luke arrived precisely at 4, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. The confident stride was gone, replaced by careful movements. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his typically immaculate suit slightly rumpled. "Thank you for seeing me," he began, settling into the visitor's chair across from my desk. I merely nodded, waiting. "This situation," he gestured vaguely. "It's affecting the business. Clients are nervous. The leadership team is confused." "Understandable," I replied. "Uncertainty tends to make markets nervous." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "Can't we renegotiate? Work out something fair? 25 years count for something, Paige." "They counted for everything," I corrected, "until you decided they didn't." "You're being petty." The accusation burst from him with sudden heat. "This is about punishment." I regarded him calmly, remembering countless negotiations where I'd maintained composure while male clients or vendors lost theirs. "No, Luke. I'm being legal. The agreement we both signed stated specific consequences for specific actions. You chose the actions. I'm simply enforcing the paperwork. That agreement was signed when we had nothing." His voice rose, then fell as he glanced toward the door. "It's unreasonable now." "Yet you never updated it," I noted. "Not during our second refinancing. Not during our third. Not when we restructured the company 5 years ago. Your lawyer reviewed those documents each time, Luke. You signed them. Each time." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it almost triggered unwanted sympathy. "Her father says it's ironclad." "It is." Something in my tone finally penetrated. His shoulders slumped slightly, reality settling over him like a heavy cloak. In that moment he looked tired. Older. The handsome face that had once made my heart race now just looked worn. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Nothing more than what's legally mine," I answered. "The company returns to my control next week. You're welcome to stay on in a reduced capacity if you wish. Or accept a severance package." He left without giving an answer, shoulders rigid with remaining dignity. Through Jennifer's network I learned the aftermath. Cassandra had stopped attending business functions. Her social media went quiet for 3 days, then resumed with conspicuous absence of Luke or company references. Against all advice, Luke brought her to one final industry dinner the following week, a desperate attempt at normalcy. Jennifer described the evening with diplomatic restraint. Silent stares, whispered comments, the young bride's increasing discomfort as the evening progressed. 2 days later, a real estate agent I knew called with gossip she couldn't contain. "The guest house on Luke's property? Cassandra moved into it yesterday. To get space, according to the housekeeper." I thanked her for the information, neither confirming knowledge nor expressing surprise. The following Monday, I formally reclaimed my office at company headquarters. Same desk, different nameplate. Paige Patton, Chief Executive Officer. No fanfare, no announcement. I simply arrived, nodded to the receptionist, and began reviewing quarterly reports. Employees stopped by throughout the day, some nervous, some relieved, all curious. I addressed each with the same calm efficiency I'd always employed. "Business continues," became my mantra. "Goals remain unchanged." I didn't post triumphant messages online. Didn't issue melodramatic press releases. Didn't leak stories to industry publications about the scorned wife's revenge. I simply worked. Scheduled meetings. Signed contracts. Reassured clients. Steadied the company that had always been partly mine, now fully so. With silence and precision, the same qualities that had built everything from the beginning. Seasons shifted. Leaves turned and fell. The company stabilized under my official leadership, and I settled into a rhythm I'd actually created decades ago but never claimed as my own. Patton Manufacturing Solutions became Patterson Solutions, a subtle rebrand that acknowledged history while charting a new course. The logo remained similar, just refined. Evolution, not revolution. 6 months passed. I tracked Luke's diminishing presence through industry whispers and the occasional social media post for mutual connections. He'd taken a consulting position with a former competitor, a step down from CO, but respectable enough to save face. Their holiday party photos showed him standing slightly apart from the group, smile not quite reaching his eyes. Cassandra had transitioned to lifestyle influencer status online, posting less about being a corporate wife and more about wellness routines and home decor. The guest house featured prominently, reframed as her creative studio space. Their joint appearances grew increasingly rare. I focused on what mattered: streamlining operations, pursuing new markets, mentoring promising employees. Our Q3 earnings exceeded projections. The trade publications that had whispered about leadership turmoil now praised our seamless transition and innovative direction. December arrived with its usual flurry of year-end deadlines and holiday obligations. I'd stayed late finalizing acquisition paperwork. A small competitor with complementary technology and an excellent customer base. The office had emptied hours earlier, most employees attending the holiday gala at the Westbrook Hotel across town. I'd declined to attend, sending Michael as company representative instead. Some boundaries were still best maintained. The security desk called up at 7:42 p.m. "Mrs. Patterson, there's a Mr. Patton here to see you." "No appointment." I hesitated, surprised not by his presence but by my lack of immediate reaction to it. "Send him up." I closed the acquisition file, straightened my desk and waited. The elevator chimed. Footsteps approached, slower than his former confident stride. Luke appeared in my doorway, looking like a diminished version of himself. Thinner. Shoulders slightly hunched. The expensive suit hanging just loosely enough to notice. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, hovering at the threshold as if uncertain of his welcome. I nodded, gesturing to the visitor's chair, a reflex from 25 years of accommodating his presence. He sat carefully, glancing around the office I'd redesigned. The walnut panels replaced with lighter wood. His sailing trophies gone from the credenza, replaced by industry awards bearing the company name rather than his. Family photos still present, but arranged differently, focusing on the children as adults rather than the four of us as a unit. "You've changed things," he observed. "Updated them," I corrected. He nodded, then fell silent, seemingly lost in how to begin a conversation he'd clearly rehearsed. "Is this about the Merriweather account?" I asked finally. "Because Michael already—" "No," he interrupted. "Nothing like that. This isn't business." He paused. "Well, it is. But it's not." I waited, unwilling to make this easier for him. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," he said finally. "Taking the company. Enforcing the prenup. I thought it was a power play. A negotiating tactic." "Because you still think I'm weak," I replied, the observation calm, not accusatory. "No," he shook his head. "Because I never thought you cared about power. You always seemed content letting me be the face of everything." "Seeming content and being content are different things," I said. "But you're right about one thing: I never cared about power. I cared about what we built." His gaze tracked around the office again, taking in the subtle transformations. The conference room visible through the glass wall where my leadership team had gathered earlier, the new company logo embossed on presentation folders, the industry award we'd received last month under my direction. "My team," I said, following his gaze. "My decisions. My presence." Something shifted in his expression, recognition dawning slowly, painfully. "You were the best part of all of this," he admitted, voice rough with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "The foundation. The reason any of it worked. And now you're not part of it at all," I observed. He exhaled slowly, hands resting on his knees. "Cassandra wants out," he said finally. "She's been talking to divorce attorneys. Says she didn't sign up for this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing his diminished circumstances. "No," I agreed. "She signed up for what I built. You gave it to her empty." His eyes reddened, a vulnerability I'd rarely witnessed during our marriage. "I was stupid," he whispered. "You were selfish," I corrected, not unkindly. "Stupid would have been if I had stayed silent." He nodded, accepting the distinction without argument. We sat in silence for a moment, the distant hum of the heating system the only sound in the empty office. "Do you know what hurts the most?" he asked finally. "Not the money or the company or even the humiliation. It's that I threw away the person who knew me best. Who built everything with me." I said nothing, allowing him the realization without relieving its weight. "She doesn't even like jazz," he said suddenly. "I took her to Montreux last month. That festival we always talked about attending. She was bored after 20 minutes. Spent the evening on her phone." I almost smiled at the absurdity, this small detail somehow embodying the entirety of his miscalculation. "Emma's engaged," I said, changing the subject. She's telling everyone at Christmas. That's wonderful, he replied, genuine despite his surprise at being excluded from the knowledge. Jack. Starting his residency in July. Pediatric oncology. He nodded, pride and loss battling visibly across his features. I've missed so much, he murmured. And for what? The question hung between us, rhetorical yet demanding an answer neither of us could provide. Can we be friends? He asked finally, leaning forward slightly. Find some way back to something, I don't know. Something better than this. I studied him, this man I'd loved since I was 23. This man I'd built a life and business alongside. This man who'd discarded it all for the illusion of recaptured youth. Luke, I said gently, you were my entire life. Now you're just a signed contract I executed. The words landed with quiet finality. No malice. No triumph. Just truth. He absorbed them, nodded once and stood. No counterarguments. No pleas. Perhaps the first time in our relationship he'd accepted my boundary without negotiation. Luke walked to the door, paused as if to say something more, then continued without turning back. That was our real divorce. Not the papers filed months earlier. Not the division of assets. Not the wedding gift that exposed the truth. Just this moment of absolute clarity. No courtroom required. No shouting necessary. Reality standing firmly between us. I sat in my office, truly mine now, long after the elevator timed his departure. Not crying. Not celebrating. Just acknowledging the closing of a chapter 25 years in the writing. I didn't need revenge. Had never wanted it, really. Just a well-documented memory and good lighting to frame it. That night I moved the framed prenuptial agreement from my study to the company archives. Not hidden away but properly filed among other historical documents. Evidence of origins, not weapons for ongoing battles. The war after all was over. Both sides had lost something. Both had gained something else. And in the mirror of his final recognition, I'd found something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction at his regret, but liberation from needing it at all. Spring arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal that felt earned rather than cliched. I planted new varieties in the garden, not replacing the perennials Luke and I had selected together over decades, but adding complementary colors and textures. Evolution, not erasure. The house I'd maintained for most of my adult life now truly became mine. I repainted the living room the shade of blue I'd always preferred but Luke had found too dark. I converted his home office into a reading nook with the oversized chair I'd coveted from a design magazine. Small changes, significant only to me, which made them all the more meaningful. It's quiet now but not lonely. The silence carries possibility rather than absence. Emma visits most Sundays, sometimes with her fiancé Mark, a kind architect with thoughtful eyes who asks about the structural details of our century-old home. Jack calls twice weekly from his hospital residency, his voice tired but fulfilled as he describes patients who break and mend his heart daily. They're both careful never to mention Luke unless I bring him up first. A boundary I appreciate but have begun gently dismantling. Their father remains their father despite everything. Compartmentalization serves no one in the long term. 3 months after Luke's office visit, I received an unexpected call from Marjorie Holt, Dean of Business at the local community college. We've developed a mentorship program, she explained. For women re-entering the workforce after major life transitions. Your name came up repeatedly as someone who understands both business acumen and personal reinvention. I laughed softly. Is that what I've done? Reinvented myself. You've reclaimed yourself, she corrected. There's a difference. The program launched in summer. 12 women, conference room Tuesday evenings. Most over 40, some approaching 60. Divorced, widowed, laid off, or simply tired of supporting husbands' dreams at the expense of their own. They arrived with resumes listing volunteer work instead of paid positions, with half-finished degrees abandoned for family obligations, with business ideas nurtured secretly for decades. They came to me broken, starting over. Not that they would use those terms. They spoke of transitions and new chapters. But I recognized the look in their eyes, the disorienting blend of terror and possibility that comes when foundations shift. I don't know where to begin, admitted Caroline, a former pharmaceutical sales rep who'd spent 15 years raising children while her husband built his dental practice, only to discover his relationship with his hygienist extended beyond professional boundaries. Don't just move on, move smart, I told her and the others. Emotion is understandable. Strategy is essential. I taught them what no business school covered: how to leverage domestic skills for professional environments, how to translate voluntary labor into marketable experience, how to recognize their own worth in a system designed to discount it. We discussed prenuptial agreements, investment strategies, intellectual property rights, the unsexy paperwork that determines futures when relationships crumble. The company continued thriving under my leadership. We rebranded officially to Patterson Solutions, my maternal family name now prominently displayed on headquarters signage and marketing materials. The transition proved beneficial. Clients appreciated the fresh perspective while maintaining established relationships. Several competitors who dismissed the leadership troubles as fatal now sought acquisition talks. People inevitably ask about Luke when I attend industry functions or charity events. Former associates probe delicately, curiosity thinly veiled as concern. I've developed a simple response: we had different goals. It's true, concise, and reveals nothing while appearing transparent. A corporate communications strategy applied to personal matters. Cassandra remarried 8 months after her separation from Luke became public. A real estate developer her own age, financially stable, socially appropriate, uncomplicated. Their wedding announcement appeared in the same society pages that had once celebrated her union with Luke, though notably more subdued in tone and scale. I heard through retail circles that she'd accepted a management position at an upscale boutique downtown, handling marketing and social media, playing to her strengths. When we occasionally cross paths at community functions or restaurants, she's unfailingly civil. No dramatic glares or pointed avoidance. Just the measured courtesy of two adults who recognize that small towns require peaceful coexistence. I hold no grudge against her. She didn't steal anything. He gave it away. She simply accepted what was offered without questioning its provenance or sustainability. Luke remains in the area, though his consulting position eventually transitioned to something more permanent with a firm in the next county. Sometimes I see his car around town, the silver Audi he purchased after the divorce, more modest than his previous vehicles but still maintaining appearances. He never honks or waves when our paths cross. He knows better. Not because I harbor anger but because we've exhausted our relevant connections. I've moved the framed prenuptial agreement from the company archives to my home study. Not displayed prominently but not hidden either. Just another document among books and photographs. I keep it not out of pride or bitterness but principle. A reminder that legal foresight isn't vindictiveness, it's self-respect. That documentation matters. That intentions without protections are merely wishes. The business mentorship program expanded to neighboring counties, then statewide. I've been invited to speak at women's leadership conferences, my story sanitized for public consumption but no less impactful for its editing. I emphasize practical protection over emotional narratives, though both have their place. The biggest myth they sell us, I tell my students, is that wives are disposable. That our contributions are supporting roles rather than foundational elements. That we are participating in someone else's story rather than co-authoring a shared narrative. In retrospect, the truth seems so obvious. I was the architect of the life Luke claimed as his achievement. He was merely the tenant, occupying space I designed and maintained. And Cassandra? She was neither villain nor victim, but the final proof that men like Luke only learn when the ink dries on consequences they never bothered to read. I didn't destroy them or their relationship. I didn't manufacture drama or orchestrate revenge. I simply enforced what was already written, what had always been there had Luke ever bothered to look. Last month, Emma announced her pregnancy at our regular Sunday dinner. As conversation bubbled around potential names and nursery colors, she asked an unexpected question. "Mom, would you consider being my business partner? I want to open that interior design firm we've talked about, but I'll need help with the business side. Especially after the baby comes." "You don't need me," I said automatically. "You've got your degree, your experience." "I want you," she interrupted. "Not because I need training wheels but because we'd be good together." Different strengths, shared values. I considered her offer, recognizing it for what it was. Not a request for help but an invitation to partnership. An equal collaboration from inception, documented and acknowledged. Yes, I said. But with one condition. Everything in writing from day one. He smiled, understanding completely. I wouldn't have it any other way. So now I begin again. Not returning to the starting line, but creating an entirely new course with the wisdom of experience and the freedom of choice. A life not built around someone else's dreams or dismantled by someone else's decisions. A life I actually chose. If this tale of calculated patience and prenuptial precision had you on the edge of your seat, subscribe now to never miss another story of well-deserved comeuppance. My favorite part was when Paige delivered that elegantly framed prenup to the wedding reception, watching the dominoes fall from a distance. What was your favorite moment from Paige's masterclass in dignified revenge? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more satisfying stories of justice served cold. Hit that notification bell so you'll be first to see when we post our next video.